We brush our teeth twice a day without fail, but most of us can't name a single thing that we do to care for our eyes. And yet we rely on them more than any other sense. And while we're meticulously whitening and flossing and polishing our teeth, our eyes are quietly dealing with decades of mascara and eyeliner and long wear shadow and lash serums, powders, creams, makeup removers. And it's all applied to the thinnest skin on the body, often without properly cleansing it all away at the end of the day. Now, modern beauty trends have only intensified the pressure on the eye area. Think bigger lashes and tighter lining and heavier pigments and longer staying power. And that's not because everyone loves the ritual, but because many people feel that they have to do this to look a certain way. And each habit on its own may seem harmless, but together, day after day, year after year, they influence the eyelids and the tear ducts and the tiny oil glands that help keep our eyes comfortable. And most people never consider that the same routines that make them feel polished may also contribute to occasional dryness or irritation or discomfort. Now, the beauty industry rarely talks about any of this. We obsess over serums and acids and SPF, but we almost never pause to consider how everyday routines have the potential to interact with the physiology of our eyes. And that's why today's conversation opens up that missing part of the beauty discussion by raising awareness of how to care for the area that we rely on the most. Welcome to Green Beauty Conversations, in which I challenge the beauty industry to become sustainable, champion independent and green beauty, and encourage you to join me in making beauty better. I'm your host, Lorraine Dallmeier. I'm a chartered environmentalist, biologist, and the CEO of award-winning online organic cosmetic formulation school, Formula Botanica. We have tens of thousands of students in over 190 countries around the world who study with us to become organic beauty formulators and entrepreneurs. Visit our website at formulabotanica.com to try our free online formulation course. And if you want to be the first person to know what's happening in green beauty, make sure you subscribe to this podcast in your favorite podcast app. So in today's episode, I'm joined by Dr. Pam Theriot, an optometrist, author, and dry eye specialist based in Louisiana in the US, with more than 20 years of experience in eye care. She leads the Dry Eye Relief Center at Lusk Eye Specialists, where she helps people find personalized long-term solutions to chronic irritation and discomfort. Her professional focus began with her own struggle to wear contact lenses, run comfortably, or even apply makeup without dryness getting in the way. And that experience grew into a career-long mission to help others feel at ease in their own eyes again. Today, she shares her most effective tools and strategies through her book, Alleviate Dry Eye, through her online courses, her weekly blog, and her editor's pick award-winning TEDx talk, reaching people around the world who live with red, irritated eyes and fluctuating vision. Dr. Theriot's goal is simple and ambitious: to help 1 million people learn to care for their eyes as routinely as they care for their teeth. Hi, Pam. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here.
Thank you for joining me. I am really interested in the work you do. So for our listeners, could you please introduce yourself first and tell us more about you?
Absolutely. Well, I am Dr. Pam Theriot. I'm an optometrist and dry eye specialist. I've been practicing for 25 years. I practice in Shreveport, Louisiana. And this year, I was honored to give a TEDx talk in Vancouver in January, where I was able to spread the word of the importance of eye exams on a global stage. I couched that in the reference to that we live in a screen-filled world and 3 tips we could do to protect our eyes.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. We've never had anyone on the podcast before who's talked about eye health, so this is an absolute first. And I guess the question that most people have on their lips is the obvious link between personal care products and their potential impact on eye health. What is the link?
Well, absolutely. What I like to talk about most is eye-safe beauty products, because our cosmetics sit in, on, and around our eyes all day long, 12 to 16 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week, for decades and decades and decades. So the ingredients in these products have a profound effect on the health of our eyes through toxicity. So the products sit on the eyes, they can cause inflammation, they can cause damage to the delicate structures of the eyes. And over decades and decades, this can really add up to being a significant problem and cause dry eye disease, primarily.
Interesting. So what have any studies been done to demonstrate, to provide evidence of that link between those personal care ingredients and potential issues with eye health?
Yes, actually in 2023, there is a task force called the Tear Film and Ocular Surface Society. And they did a study that was a global initiative taking 150 scientists, clinicians, and researchers from around the globe, got them all together and looked at all the lifestyle factors that affect the front surface of our eye. They broke that down into 7 categories, and one of the 7 categories was cosmetics. So looking at the ingredients in these cosmetics that could cause damage. So there's plenty of research out there on individual ingredients and their effects on the structures of the eyes, inflammation, toxicity, death of the cells of the eyes on the front surface or in the eyelids themselves.
Wow.
You look dismayed.
I look horrified for those listeners who obviously can't see us. But can you give us an example of types of ingredients where they have actually found that correlation between those particular ingredients and the negative effects on the eye?
Absolutely. So there's a great study using preservatives, which they took the preservatives and put them into a petri dish with the cells of the glands that line the inside of the eyes and found that the concentrations that would kill those cells were 1/10 of what cosmetics would use to actually preserve the cosmetics. So at very low levels, these ingredients were found to be toxic to the cells and could cause cell death.
Yeah. Oh God, that's fascinating. So what kind of preservatives are we talking about here? Because many of the listeners are formulators. They'll be familiar with quite a few ingredients. Are there any sort of familiar names that they might recognize?
Right. Parabens and formaldehydes are definitely 2 that come to the top of mind. And you're thinking, formaldehyde, don't we embalm dead bodies with formaldehyde? But unfortunately, the glues that people use to apply lash extensions often contain formaldehyde. So it is often used directly on the eye. And then those ingredients are just so close to the eye for long periods of time. So when you're gluing something to your eye, and that can really cause damage, inflammation, and inflammation is the root cause of dry eye disease. So it actually causes our bodies to produce less tears when there is inflammation present.
Gosh, it's interesting, because I'm sure most people have never even considered this. And it's interesting what you were saying about the study, because of course it has to be done in a petri dish, i.e. in vitro, and not, in a clinical trial, because you can't actively go and try and inflame people's eyes with personal care products. So it's a tough situation to be in. And sometimes it's very hard to extrapolate from in vitro to in vivo. But then on the other hand, if it potentially has a risk, then you've got to think about it. So I guess the question I have is, most people never connect their daily personal care routines with their eye health. Why do you think that's so overlooked?
That is a good question. Unfortunately, in our society, we pay so much more attention to our teeth than we do to our eyes. And most of us think that there's one sense that we would not want to lose. It is our sight. And we brush our teeth twice a day from the time we are 2. And most of us can't name one thing that we do to care for our eyes on a daily basis. So we really need to start flipping the script and considering that the plaque that we're removing from our teeth twice a day, there's the same kind of biofilm on the front of the eye that attaches to the lids when we do things like leave our cosmetics on overnight or for days and days and days. If you're leaving it on overnight, then it's just there. Then that is causing downstream problems, just like plaque on your teeth would cause a cavity.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I'm 46 and it wasn't until 2 years ago. I've got a good friend who's an ophthalmologist and she almost sort of marched me to the opticians to go and have an eye check for the first time in my life. So I hear you. We put so much effort on looking after our teeth, but not the same with our eyes. Can we talk a little bit about the eye and how it works? Because I think a lot of the people listening won't really understand how all of it's put together and why it's so vulnerable to what we put on our eyelids and on our skin around them.
Absolutely. So I think the first thing that we need to bring to mind is that our eyelids are there for a specific purpose, not to make us look beautiful, but actually to protect our eyes. And they need to close all the way. They need to blink properly. They need to touch together the upper and lower lid every time we blink in order to keep the front surface of the eye clear. The eye is a mucous membrane, just like the inside of our mouths or the inside of our noses. However, unlike our noses and mouths, our eyes are open most of our waking hours, right? And that blinking is refreshing, recoating that front surface of our eye. So wearing cosmetics that are causing damage to the glands inside the eyelids is detrimental. Also, anything that could cause the lids not to close properly, or let's say we were wearing these really extravagant lashes and then our blinking was impaired. You couldn't blink all the way, or they couldn't close all the way. I'm talking about things that could happen from decades and decades and decades of use, not necessarily just one day of use. Definitely these things can have an effect on the structures of the eye. We've all looked at an 80-year-old and see that the upper skin of the lid, hangs down. And over the decades, that really does cause an inability of the eyelids to close properly. So then you have chronic exposure of the front surface of the eye. There are some ingredients in cosmetics that can cause profound effects to the structures of the eye, such as prostaglandin analogs, which are put into eyelash lengtheners. And these actually cause a decrease of the fat that's in and around the eyes. So after decades of use, you can have sunken look where your eye is into the socket, and that can really affect how well your lids are closing and protecting your eyes over time.
So we've got to look after the health of our eyelids. And then you mentioned the glands as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those glands are, what they're called, why they're so important?
Right, exactly. So inside of our eyelids, the lower lid and the upper lid, there's more than 30 oil glands. And these oil glands are part of our tear film, or the oil that they secrete becomes part of our tears. It actually makes up a third of what creates the tear film. And these oil glands are very delicate. We have only had the ability to image these oil glands in about the past decade, where practitioners have this technology within their offices. So not every practitioner has it, and we haven't had the technology for very long. But now we can flip the eyelid inside out and take an image of those glands and see the health of them. Because this technology is so new, we are learning lots and lots of things about these oil glands. Like, for instance, if I have a patient who's worn contact lenses for, let's say, 2 decades or 20 years, we often see that right in the middle of their lid, where they pull their lid down to take out their contact lens, there is an atrophy to those glands right in the middle. So wherever they pull their lid down, day after day after day. So they're very delicate. It's not because you pull too hard one day, but it's because you're doing it every single day for decades. The other thing that we see in these oil glands is that if women have had a tattooed eyeliner, we often see an atrophy of those glands because the tattooing has gone in, poked holes in the glands, and has caused an injury, and then the glands tend to atrophy over time. The glands themselves, I don't think I talked about this part, is that when our lids come together, those 30 glands on the upper and the 30 on the lower, when our eyelids come together, it's enough pressure that just a little bit of oil comes out of the glands, and then we spread the oil across the front surface of our eyes. So that part of the tear film is there to protect the eyes from the environment, from the eyes drying out in the atmosphere. So when we don't have healthy glands, that our eyes dry quicker.
That's incredible.
They are. And like I said, we knew they were there, but we didn't have a way to image them easily up until about 10 years ago.
So what are the most common pathways then that personal care products can affect the health of our eyes? You've talked a little bit about lashes already, but what are the ways that they can affect these glands, for instance, or the healthy eyelid?
So I think there's 2. The first is that the lids are the thinnest skin of the body. So the ingredients in these products can easily absorb into the skin and affect the structures within. The second is that powders, glitters can just fall into the tear film, and now they're swimming around on the front surface of our eye, and they're draining with the tears into the nose. And so that is another way that we can get what I call micro abrasions on the front surface of the eye from these powders, from glitters that are then swimming around in the tear film. So they can be absorbed readily into the skin. And they can also clog the oil glands on the front surface of the eye. And once they're in the tear film, they're swimming around, causing those micro abrasions.
My goodness. I'm sure most people have never considered this. And when you see your patients in the clinic and they come in with eye dryness or irritation, how often do you think their personal care routine plays a role in that? Can you tell?
Oh, right. I don't know specifically that I can give you a percentage, but it is definitely a part. Dry eye disease is multifactorial. So it comes from our natural aging process. It comes from hormonal changes that we get as throughout life. And like I said, that study that was done in 2023 had 8 different categories of our lifestyle, like sleep and diet, medications that we take, that all affect our tears. Definitely it plays a role, and making some really simple switches or swaps of your cosmetics can make a profound change to the comfort of your eyes.
Can you always tell when it relates, when patients come to your clinic and you can see there's something wrong? Can you tell when it's caused by their personal care products, or is that too hard to tell?
No, you can tell. Some telltale signs would be patients or people who tightline their eyeliner. So that's when they put the eyeliner on the waterline of the eye. And that is not your skin. That's your eye. And that is exactly where those oil glands that we were just talking about, that's where the orifices are. So if you cover that up with a cosmetic, number one, it's going to be right into your tear film later on. It's going to be swimming around in there. But number two, you've just blocked those oil glands that produce one of the most important parts of our tear film. So your tears don't have enough oil in them. They're going to start to dry out very quickly.
Yeah. I think a lot of people would assume that it's mainly makeup that has the potential to affect the eyes, but are there any skincare or other personal care, grooming products maybe that cause problems too?
Oh, absolutely. So it's anything that you're going to put in, on, and around your eyes. So lotions, potions, and creams that maybe we use our delicate little pinky finger and we pat it around our lids because we want to be gentle, and you're smearing on a toxic product, right, with our gentle little fingers. So absolutely, the ingredients in anything that's going in, on, and around our eyes is going to affect the health of them.
When you say toxic product, are you referring to the ingredients inside the product or the fact that it can have toxicity on the eye?
So what I'm referring to is the ingredients being toxic. You living in the European Union, you know that you guys have a list of ingredients that you do not allow in your products. In the US, we have a very, very short list of ingredients that aren't allowed to get into our products. So there's a lot more risk in the United States of getting products that have toxic ingredients. And that was one of the things that the Tear Film and Ocular Surface Society really went out to look at. What it has been studied, what are the ingredients? And they came up with dozens and dozens of ingredients that should not make it to lists of ingredients on cosmetic products.
Yeah. No, I mean, the difference between the US and the EU is absolutely fascinating. I mean, just for clarification, the long list over here does contain things that you would never put in cosmetics anyway. And we've obviously gone over and above to list them all, things like bodily tissues or blood and things like that, which you would never put in a cosmetic anyway. But the US does have a very tiny list, I agree. How much of the problem would you say is product versus behavior? For instance, is it that people are maybe applying the eye cream too close to the lash line, or they're over exfoliating, or they're rubbing their eyes, or how does that work?
I think it could be 50-50. So on the behavior side of it, I have a top 3 list of behaviors that I will harp and harp and harp at my patients about, right? So if you come into my clinic with tight lining, I will call you out on it. Like, no more. You can do that once a year if your only child gets married, or if you are on the biggest date night of your life, you can tightline your eyes, but it's not a daily practice.
Can I just ask, what's tightlining for everyone listening and me?
Oh, right. So tightlining is where you put the eyeliner on the water line of the eye. So as I said, you're covering up those meibomian glands that are so important. So tightlining is on the inner lid. The second is I don't recommend waterproof products. So 2 reasons not to recommend the waterproof products is that the ingredients in there to make them waterproof or to stick on the eye longer tend to be more toxic. And then you've got to use a ton more elbow grease to get those products off of your eyes. And the third golden rule at my clinic is that if you put it on, you have to commit to taking it off. So at the end of the day or the end of the night, we've got to remove our eye makeup.
Yeah, I get it. I'm sitting here feeling highly guilty about some of my behaviors as you're talking. Are there any natural ingredients that you've seen to be problematic in terms of eye makeup removal or other ingredients that might be applied around the eye?
Absolutely. So two that come top of mind. I don't know that it's particularly natural, but alcohol. Alcohol tends to make it in as a preservative, especially in those eye makeup removal wipes. Alcohol is, if you smell it, it tingles your nose. Think of what that's doing around the delicate tissues of your eyes. And the second one is tea tree oil. And this can really be a concentration dependent and length of time that the tea tree oil is in close proximity to the structures of the eyes. But again, there are some in vitro studies in the petri dish with the tea tree oil and the cells of the front surface of the eye, and very low concentrations of tea tree oil can do damage.
And this is very topical because the here in the EU, they've just restricted quite heavily the percentage of tea tree oil that you can use in leave-on and rinse-off products for exactly that reason. And I can't imagine that there aren't a ton of other essential oils actually that would also be highly problematic, like cinnamon, clove, that sort of thing. You probably wouldn't want them anywhere near your eyes. You certainly don't want them anywhere near your lips. So I can't imagine. Oh my goodness, doesn't even bear thinking about. So yes, I'm sure some of these natural ingredients you don't want around your eyes either. When you meet with your patients in your clinic and you see that there might be some behavioral changes that need to be made, how do they usually respond when you bring up their personal care products? Do they take that well?
So I've been in practice 25 years. Let me start with that. So I never say, Mrs. Jones, your eye makeup is killing your eyes. I never started that way. I start with the health of their eyes. So with the eyeliner, for instance, I might say that I'm seeing something here that concerns me. Your cosmetics are lining over the area where the oils of your eye are supposed to be released. And that can downstream cause dry eye symptoms. And really putting it into the health of their eye versus the way that they look, their appearance. I never want to talk about their appearance. I want to talk about how that is affecting the health of their eyes. Back a few years ago, there was a photo that really went around on the internet. The inside of their upper lid of a woman who had not removed her eye makeup for decades, I think it was. And the black pigment from her mascara had embedded into the cells inside the upper lid.
I have a very horrified look on my face at the moment.
Horrified. As an eye care practitioner, I am horrified when I'll flip a patient's lid and you look underneath and there's just a ton of black. It's embedded there. So you think about how many times a day we blink our eyes. It is thousands of times that we blink throughout the day. And the micro abrasions that those little bitty pigment particles are causing on the front surface of our eyes is just destructive.
How do you feel about makeup now, having done this for a long time?
I love makeup. I think that we need to apply it properly, ensure that it's not floating or falling into our eyes all day long. And we're not going to get rid of makeup. We're not going to tell our patients to stop wearing it because that is an argument we are going to lose, right? I feel for cigarette manufacturers, like how are they supposed to convince people to use their products when there is such a strong evidence that it is harmful? And so, on the flip side, I'm trying to tell people to stop wearing something that they feel makes them feel beautiful. And especially women, we get into these habits where we can't go out without putting on our face.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard that?
Yep.
And the habits that they get into, well, that's just the way I've always worn my makeup. I have to tightline my eyes or someone wouldn't recognize me. I mean, the ideas we get in our heads about our appearances are deeply ingrained.
Yes, this is very true. It's interesting you make the comparison between cigarettes and eye makeup, though. I wasn't expecting that one. The thing that I found fascinating is when your team reached out to the podcast to get you on the podcast, that was the first time anyone's ever talked to me about eye health in the beauty industry. Never has it come up. And I have talked to thousands of people on this podcast, outside the podcast. I've been doing this for, I don't know, coming up to 15 years. Never has anyone brought this up. Why is no one talking about it?
Oh, now I have a horrified look on my face. I think it's because the research is really new. As I said, we didn't have the evidence of the damage that this was causing until more recently. We didn't have the technology to look at those structures of our patients' eyes. As I said, I've been in practice 25 years and I've only had this technology in my clinic for the past 5. It was available in research and for about a decade now, but I've only had it in my own clinic for about 5 years. So being able to image these structures of the eyes has really opened up.
Some labeling. How about education? Would that help at all, do you think? In terms
Absolutely.
of talking to people? I know that's obviously what you're doing day in, day out.
Right. So I think if you opened up YouTube or TikTok, you would find thousands of beauty influencers. And how many are really talking about what is going on the eyes? We could get more of these influencers talking about the dangers of the products they're talking about versus how to apply them and where to apply them and how you're looking. I think that can make a profound impact. Having images of people, as I was talking about with those lash extension products that cause this fat atrophy. So the eye itself ends up looking sunken because the fat around the eye has atrophied so significantly. Then, those kinds of images out in the world, like, okay, yeah, you're using this lash lengthener today, 20 years from now, what are your eyes going to look like?
Fascinating. Well, thank you for sharing all of this on the podcast. It's been really interesting learning more about ocular health and personal care. As I said, it's not something I've come across before. So if people want to find out more about you and your work, how can they do so?
Absolutely. So I have a website where I share all the eye health information. It's at www.pamtheriot.com, and my last name is spelled pamtheriot.com. And I'd love to share a downloadable resource with your audience, which at the same website, pamtheriot.com/remover. And you could download my sensitive eye makeup remover guide, which also has a few clean beauty products at the end.
Amazing. We'll include all those links in the show notes. Pam, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Have you ever considered that there could potentially be an interaction between your personal care products and your eyes? Leave us a comment on our social channels, as both the Formula Botanica team and I love hearing from you. And if you want to hear some more episodes, please do delve back into the podcast archives. There are so many great episodes. For instance, go and have a listen to episode 165, which was titled Revolutionizing the Nail Industry, in which I interviewed Candice Quinn of ManiSafe about the way that the nail industry is impacting our health. Again, this is a topic that hardly anyone is talking about. Or head over to episode 143, which was titled The Brand Creating Mascara Tubes to Last 2,500 Years, in which I interviewed Shannon Goldberg of Izzy Zero Waste Beauty, and we talked about the way that she's created a circular mascara company. There is a wealth of information in our old episodes, and I do encourage you to go back and listen to them. Thank you for joining Pam and I for this latest episode of Green Beauty Conversations. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do leave us a 5-star review so that other people can enjoy these conversations too. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever your favorite podcast app is, and stay tuned for the next episode. Follow Formula Botanica at Formula Botanica on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn. We are everywhere. And come and give me a follow at Lorraine Dallmeier on Instagram and LinkedIn. Visit our website at formulabotanica.com and sign up for our free online formulation course today.